In today's video, I'm going to answer the question, how far will the RAM OEM Trailer Tire Pressure Monitoring System, we'll just say TPMS from now on, how far will that system work? For example, if you've got a fifth wheel and you want to put those little transmitters, those sensors in your tires on the fifth wheel, will it still pick up on the truck? Now, if you're watching this and you don't have a Ram truck, then you need to stop fixing or repairing daily and get yourself one. Now, just a little backstory before we get started. So almost a year ago, I was researching and planning to order my new Ram truck here. And one of the factory installed options that was offered was the Trailer TPMS system. And I believe it was right around 250 bucks at the time to order with the truck. And basically they give you 4 little valve stems, TPMS sensors that you put inside your trailer tires. And then there's a receiver in the truck itself that reads in the tire pressure from your trailer tires, and then it sends it actually to the EVIC, the 7-inch display that's behind your steering wheel, you know, between the speedometer and the RPM dial. And so this is super convenient, obviously, to be able to read in your trailer tire pressure all the time without having to plug anything in, you know, bring any extra cords or modules along to make that happen, right? Because most of us, without a system like this that's integrated, we're having a third party, like a valve stem cap that we're screwing on to our trailer tires to the valve stem, and then having some module that we plug into our truck to charge, or maybe we pair it with our phone and then it reads in the tire pressure on our trailer tires through a third-party solution like that. But it's kind of clunky and you've got to have another display, and it's just one more thing to keep up with, right? And so for me, the idea of having this all integrated was very appealing. But when I started researching it and reading forums online to see what do people think of this system, a lot of people were complaining that the distance was too far, that, you know, they could get it to work on shorter trailers, but on fifth wheels and longer, you know, tandem and triple axle trailers, that the distance was too great and the sensors were not reading in properly to the truck. And so obviously this, you know, was kind of a big disappointment because it sounded very promising. But I figured for the cost, might as well go ahead and order it, and then I could, you know, test it out and see if it actually works. And so I did go ahead and order the option on my truck, and I'm really glad I did, because I've got some really good news to report today on the distance. Now, the first step to make use of the Ram Trailer TPMS system is to have the actual valve stems with the TPMS sensors installed inside your tires. And unfortunately, this is not a DIY project. It's something that you really need to take to a local tire shop. You know, they have the proper equipment and they're used to installing TPMS sensors because almost every car has them nowadays. And so they will take the sensors from Ram and then install them into your tires. The downside is you do have to unmount them from your RV and bring them to the tire shop. So that's a little bit of a challenge depending on what kind of jacks and equipment that you have to hold up your RV while the tires are missing. But once you get over that hurdle, the next step is just to find a tire shop that will actually do this for you. Now, I called around and I think it took me 3 different tire shops calling until I found one that was willing to do it. You know, some tire shops said, hey, we don't work on third-party rims or third-party tires, third-party TPMS sensors. We strictly only do our own. But the third one I called was glad to do it, and they basically just charged me what they would charge to mount a regular tire to install those TPMS sensors. Now, here's a close-up of what the actual TPMS sensors look like. So you can see the valve stem here, what goes on the outside of your wheel, and then this is actually on the inside of the wheel and the tire. And it's just like any other TPMS system that's in a modern car here. So this is actually what you have to have and take to the tire shop to have them install. And I'll just pan out here and zoom so you can see the whole instruction sheet that's provided by Ram. If you want to pause this so you can get more details on what that looks like, here it is. But basically I took all this to my local tire shop, and you can see it even comes with some different adapters for 1/2-inch valve holes and also 5/8-inch valve holes, just meaning the diameter of the hole that the stem goes through. And so they also do give you some different washers and adapters here. Now, it's kind of interesting, the tire shop that I took it to, it took them a little bit longer to get it done. And when I picked them up, I was talking to the tech that did it, and he explained that he tried to do it with these supplied adapters, and every time he got it seated and everything, the tires would leak out of the valve stem, and so he just couldn't get it to work. So what he did is he took another TPMS kit that he already had that they use for, I guess, other cars as they change out the tires, and whatever was in that TPMS kit, the different washers, they actually worked on the aluminum rims on my RV. So that was great news. And that, by the way, was another thing that I read in a lot of forums online, is people said, hey, if you got aluminum rims, the Ram factory TPMS sensors aren't going to mount properly. And so I imagine that whatever is different about these aluminum rims versus basic steel rims, there's something different on the seal, the way the TPMS sensor, kind of seats and bolts against the aluminum wheel that's different compared to a steel wheel. And so the tech, fortunately, that I took it to was able to figure that out and did it right. And I have not had any issues with these valve stems leaking air or losing air over time. And it's been about 2 months since I had them installed. Now, just for clarity, for those who noticed on my valve stems, I have this cap that looks awfully suspicious like a third-party TPMS sensor. Well, it is. So here's the story on that. This is a Jayco Pinnacle, and it comes with a BM Pro system, like a command center basically, and they actually give you 4 of these to monitor the trailer tire pressure. So it's pretty slick, and I kind of like it that I have redundant TPMS capabilities, so I can monitor the pressure obviously while I'm driving in the truck, but that I can also see the TPMS through these sensors here on my phone or the command center inside the RV. So that's what these guys are right here. Otherwise, if you didn't have this, it would just be a basic gray cap that screws onto your valve stem like normal. All right, so once you get the valve stems installed in the trailer tires, that's really most of the battle to overcome there. The next step is just to pair them to the truck, and I recommend doing this before you actually install the tires back on your RV, and that way if something goes awry, you can get it fixed and not have to take them off the RV again. So I just did it with the tires in the back of my truck bed, and I'll just show you real quick how to get to it. You're gonna go to your apps there, and then go to your settings. Let's see, here we go, settings. And then you're gonna scroll all the way down to your trailers right here. And then pick which trailer. You can have 4 different trailers that it kind of keeps a memory of for settings, brakes, and such. But we're going to go to my 5th wheel here, and then you'll see this trailer or tire pressure rather option if you have it installed on your truck. So this is where you're going to pair initially. So you'll go to this set up all tires thing, and I'm not going to do it because it's going to delete my settings, and I don't want that to happen. But there's other videos on how to set that up, and basically you begin the process after you set the target PSI, and then they have you release some of the tire pressure on that particular tire that you're trying to pair, and then the truck picks up on the PSI changing, and then the horn chirps and lets you know that it was successful. And they'll have you go in a certain pattern. If I remember right, it starts on the driver left, I believe, and then kind of works its way down and then back around the other side of your trailer. So you just have to follow the instructions. Not super complicated. The only thing I will say is I watched some other videos from other guys doing it, and there was one that mentioned that it was kind of a struggle initially, and he had to let a lot of PSI out of his tires. I think RAM says, let 5 PSI out of the tires as you're pairing them. And this particular individual had to let out just a lot of PSI, just keep, basically releasing pressure, maybe 30, 40 PSI before the truck picked up on it. And for me personally, I found initially the same problem. I was trying to get that first tire paired, and I was releasing pressure, and I think I went from 80 PSI down to 40 and still nothing on the truck, nothing whatsoever. And so I decided I'm just going to fill the tire back up all the way, shut the truck off, turn it back on, and restart the whole process. And magically, when I did that, it worked great. And I only let 5 PSI out of that first tire, and the horn chirped, and then same thing for the other 3 tires, and worked very seamlessly. So I'm not sure what I was doing wrong the first go round, but if you're having trouble getting them to pair, just shut everything down, literally, turn the truck off, get out of the truck, hop back in the truck, turn it back onto the run position, and then go through all these menus and try it again. And for me, that's what it took for the tires to be recognized. So once you get it paired to your truck, you should be theoretically good to go. The only time that you'll need to go in and reprogram is if you get a flat and have to, install a new tire. Then it'll let you replace just one tire sensor and, not have to go through and repair all 4 of them. But it does show up in the center cluster here. You just have to scroll through using your up and down arrows to get to trailer tow. And then you're going to use your left and right buttons. It kind of defaults to the brakes. And you're going to hop over to the 3rd option, or actually the 4th one, trailer tire pressure. And you can see right now it reads in nothing. It tells you at the top that my current PSI is 80, but then it actually has little red bars on each of the 4 tires. And what I've noticed is there must be some kind of sensor in that TPMS that if the tire is stationary and not moving, then to save battery power, it kind of goes to sleep. And so if your trailer is sitting and you're not towing, you're not moving, you're not going to see anything in here. In my experience, typically once you start moving 30 to 60 seconds, if you haven't used your fifth wheel or trailer in a while, 30 to 60 seconds into pulling, all of a sudden you're going to start getting values registering properly there in there. And then once you're towing, it stays active the whole time. It's not just going to go to sleep if you're at a stoplight or something longer. So there's some kind of, delay, a timeout delay before it actually goes into that sleep standby mode. And for those curious, RAM allows you to set the desired tire pressure on your trailer tires between 25 and 125 PSI. So I think that's really versatile. Even if you've got G-rated or H-rated tires and you're 100, 110 PSI, this is compatible and this will let you set that target PSI. Now I'll throw up some still pictures of what it looks like when the PSI is actually reading in while you're driving on the center cluster there in the EVIC, so you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like. Fortunately, I was not talented enough to video that while I was driving, so I've just got stills to show you. But you can get an idea. It's just a basic PSI reading on all 4 tires. And I was very pleased. I used it for about a 7-hour round trip a few weeks back, and I kept it on this screen the entire time that I was driving because I was just curious, is it ever going to disconnect or quit reading in the values? And the entire 7+ hour trip, round trip, the values never turned red. They were constantly updating. I noticed it would go up and down 1 PSI here and there. And so I was really pleased overall because, like I said earlier, when I read in some forums, people complained that it wasn't working for them and that the distance was too great and it was cutting out. But for me personally, I did not encounter any issues. It worked flawlessly for me. And now for the $1 million question, how far is it? What is the distance from the rear tires on my truck all the way back to the furthest tire on the RV? And before I give you that number, let me just give you some basic specs on the fifth wheel. So it's a little bit over 42 feet long. And in my opinion, I think the axles are pushed a little bit further back than the average fifth wheel. And so let me just kind of pan so you can kind of get an idea there. But the reason I believe that is, first of all, you can see the overhang on the back. It's a little bit shorter than the typical fifth wheel. But I also used to have a longer fifth wheel that was 42 feet long. And let me just show you here on this concrete pad where I parked it. Hopefully you can see that, but this is where the tire, the front tire, fell on that previous 44-foot long fifth wheel. And so it was actually pushed a little bit further forward on that particular unit, and whereas this is shorter, and so the tires are actually pushed a little bit further back. I also noticed that the tongue weight, the pin weight on this particular fifth wheel, as I add things to the unit and load additional things in, it puts a lot more weight on the truck than it does on the fifth wheel axles. And so that just kind of affirms again that the axles in my situation are probably pushed a little bit further back than the average fifth wheel or the average trailer. And that's actually good news. I'm just bringing that up because I think most people, your situation is probably going to be equal to mine, or your tires are going to be even closer to your truck. And so that is good news. But what I've got here is I've got a flat white box here right at the middle of the tire that's the furthest back. And that's going to give me a nice surface to shoot a laser tape off of so we can get that exact distance. And the measurement I'm going to give you is going to be from the center of my rear truck axle all the way looking down to the center of the rearmost axle of the fifth wheel there. So that's the standard that I'm going to be going off of. Here is my Bosch laser tape. Super accurate, really easy to use. Basically in the mode that it's set right now, it's going to start measuring at the base of the device and then wherever the laser hits. And so I'm going to position the base of the device right at the center of my truck axle. And so I'm lined up right at the center of my truck axle here. And then basically it shoots a laser out, and hopefully you can see that on the video. Try to zoom in a little bit, but basically down on that white piece of cardboard that I've propped up right at the middle of the furthest trailer axle, there's that laser. And so then I'm gonna hit my measure button, and then on the laser tape, it's gonna tell me the distance there. So you can see it's 27 feet, 8 inches. And let me do one more just to make sure that I got an accurate reading. And you can see right there, 27 feet, 7 inches. So within an inch of each other. And I was, wiggling a little bit here. Not exactly scientific, but let's just say 27 feet, 8 inches from the center of my rear truck axle all the way back to the center of the furthest axle on the fifth wheel. And so that's the kind of the standard for this measurement that I'm going to give you. So if you want to compare on your fifth wheel, go ahead and hitch up your truck. You'll notice that in this case I am hitched up, So this is the normal distance that I'd be towing from. Now let me give you another measurement. Let's say you're shopping for fifth wheels and trucks and you don't really have this all yet. So let me just give you another measurement, and this one's going to be from the front of the fifth wheel, excluding the part that overhangs. Now this is going to vary a little bit from fifth wheel to fifth wheel, but you know, they're going to give you this kind of this space between your bumper and the front of the fifth wheel for clearance, and so I think that's going to be kind of similar, you know, within I'd say a 6 to 12 inch range. So let me give you this measurement also from the front edge of where the lower part of the fifth wheel starts. All right, so I'm going to shoot my white board down there. You can see I've got it hitting there, and I'm lined up right with the front of the fifth wheel. And so that is 21 feet and 7 inches, or closer to 8 inches. So let's say 21 feet, 8 inches. So if you're shopping for fifth wheels and trucks, you know, you can just go to that fifth wheel and compare, go to this front edge here of the lower part of the fifth wheel and shoot down to the center of the furthest tire down there. And if you're anything closer than 21 feet and 8 inches, then you know it's going to be very similar to my scenario. And for me, it worked flawlessly. Now, if you're watching this and you're a Ram owner and you already have the trailer TPMS installed on your truck and your rig, I'd love to hear in the comments below whether you're successful or unsuccessful, and share the same dimensions using that same standard in the comments below. So again, you're going to use the center of your rear axle on the truck and then go all the way back to the center of the furthest tire on your fifth wheel, or your trailer for that matter, and let us know what is that distance. And were you successful in your case when you set it up and paired it, and when you're driving down the road, have you noticed any abnormalities? Does it disconnect? Or have you been like me where it works flawlessly and it stays paired with no issues at all? So definitely leave a comment below. I think it'd be incredibly helpful to the community. All right, final thoughts on the Ram trailer TPMS system. So first off, if you're planning on ordering a new Ram truck, then I think it's a no-brainer to go ahead and check this option for the cost, and that way it's already on your truck, even if you're not sure that you're going to use it. And that's kind of what I did, and it really turned out well in my case. But if you already own a Ram truck and you're looking to add this option on, I can't speak to what that looks like because, you know, mine, I already ordered it with it. But if you're watching this and that is your scenario, you bought your Ram truck and you didn't get the trailer TPMS system and now you've added it on, do me a favor and let us know in the comments below what that looked like, how difficult it was, and what it cost, because I think that would be really helpful to the folks that are watching. But I wholeheartedly recommend this system. It's super convenient to be able to see that trailer TPMS, you know, on your cluster there in the EVIC all the time. You know, it's accurate. There's no wires, there's no programming or things you have to do each time. You just select your trailer and it pulls up each time flawlessly. At least in my case so far, that's how it's worked. So if you have any questions on the system, feel free to leave them below. But as always, thanks for watching.